Hello, welcome to Garden Chronicles. My name is James David. In this particular video, I would like to share this type of ferns, but it's actually not a fern. It's known as Fern ally, and this particular one is known as Huperzia nummulariifolia. Commonly, it's also a type of tassel fern, and locally it is actually identified as Pakis sise ikan. It's sort of like denoting characteristics of the leaf type that appears to be more like a fish scale. Of course, there's a different type of ferns which is also known as fish scale fern or fish tail fern, but this particular one is identified more on that basis. Just a little bit of an introduction here that I have actually made a few other videos under the Huperzia species, which you can actually check it out on the playlist which I've actually placed there, and you can actually see sort of like more a better detail of it. This particular video is very much specifically for this particular Huperzia type, and also some updates which I like to share over the years where I have experience on this. And one of the factors here that a lot of things that I've actually learned, which I like to share here in this particular video. Now, coming back to the main factor here is that most of these particular types of ferns are actually sold in nurseries where they are in a way haphazardly wrapped up with the root ball in a wire mesh, and it may not survive immediately because of stress. And I would like to make an emphasis here is that in most cases, a lot of gardeners who are basically new beginners would have tried to cultivate it and was not successful. And so this particular video is very much more on an educational factor of how to care for it. So coming back to the main factor here is that normally in most cases when I find it is very successful is to hang this particular plant upside down, and I find that it also does that in a natural circumstances where this particular plant grows naturally in a rainforest setting or anything like that. And I find that also in some cases where a different type of gardeners or collectors will also hang it in an upright manner. Of course, it's depending on their growing factors, to each their own style of growing and cultivation. But what are the things that I would rather mention here is that if you are growing it in a tropical space, I would rather suggest and strongly advise that in most cases, and I find that those who are successful and manage to grow them for many years do hang them upside down. Again, this is more on the factor of taste and sort of like how you favor it in growing. Somehow I find that hanging them upside down actually make a lot of difference for their speedy growth factor. My next tip I would rather say is very important is to always check on the leaf. Like the earlier portion of the picture when I showed that there's so many drying or more of the leaves are dead or dying, I would suggest that that is a telltale sign that the plant is not doing well. In most cases, it's considered like stressed. Now, the factor here that I want to say here is that I have mentioned earlier in my video not to disturb the leaves, because somehow I find that these particular ones is very sensitive plant. And one of the factors that I find that when the particular plant is hang on an upright manner and not upside down, and the weight of the leaves somehow snaps this particular plant and the whole frond sort of like breaks off, and it's a healthy frond, to truth be told. And one of the things that I find is that when I mention about checking on the leaves, do check and see whether there is no rot taking place at the base of the plant, because somehow I find that overwatering is somehow the culprit. The other factor that I find, which I have lost few of my particular species, is to find that the medium somehow harbor some insects, and particularly wood lice, and this particular one seems to be a harbinger of problems, especially when they start to eat and munch the root ball. And somehow I find that when the particular plant is not doing well, I find that the first sign will be more of the leaves appearing to be limp or drying off and sort of like too soggy, and there's sort of like crown rot on this factor. So these are the things that you really have to check on, especially when I mentioned about checking on the leaves. Now, occasionally you might even find that the leaf fronds appears to be growing upright when they start to put out new shoots, which is fairly okay, and these are the signs to say that the plant is very healthy and is happy in this growing condition. Now, coming to the medium, it is quite tricky, because if you were to get the medium wrong, the plant will succumb to sort of like a slow death. Now, one of the things about tassel fern here is that it is too late when you find that something is happening, and if the plant is dying, you will not know it until it is too late. That's what I meant about too late, because somehow I find that this particular tassel fern is very appear to be very hardy in their appearance. That means to say, let's say if I were to cut a frond from this and I leave it outdoors, it will appear to be looking okay for a few months, even though if the whole root ball is dead. And that is somehow a sort of like a strange factor here, is because of daily watering, the plant is still alive, but because of due to the fact that the root ball is dead, the whole plant is actually dead, and it's too late to notice it until the whole thing dies off. So one of the things that I want to mention here about when it comes to its potting medium, I always find that when it comes to coconut chips, it works best together with sphagnum moss. Now, one of the things here is that I find that majority of the people will say do not let it dry fully, which is in a way is true, but somehow it also have sort of like a paradox factor that the root ball also need to drain out fast, because the root ball does requires some level of breathing and air movement to get into that place. So a tight kind of sort of like medium, especially like if you will use a gardening soil or even like cocoa peat, it can be detrimental for the plant, because it can be too wet and may cause root rot. Another tip that I would like to share here is removing the dried leaves. Now, one of the things that I find that is sometimes certain gardeners, or even me, I would find that snipping and throwing away yellowing leaf, somehow I find that it is quite unsightly, and I find that it's not looking good, and somehow just trim them off. And the danger about here is that scissors or the cutter that you use may be infected, and it can sort of like bear fungus on that or some sort of bacteria, and it can be very dangerous. So do handle that with care. And in most cases, what I'll do is just sometimes I just pinch off and take off the totally dried pieces from the plant. But I somehow find that handling this particular plant too much can cause this plant to stress out, especially in a way that if the fronds are such that they are too much of entanglement involved, and we're trying to rearrange it properly, and you might snap and break the whole frond. If you can see here, it's quite fragile, and the danger here is handling too much can snap the whole thing. And I have experienced cases where I would not bank in at the bottom part of it, because it can be branching out to 20 to 30 pieces of fronds, or sort of like a lot of branching that taking place in the bottom, but the main frame here is at the top. So I would prefer to have a lot of branch at the top rather than the bottom, because if that one particular branch that takes place at the top snaps, the whole thing dies. Now, I would like to make an emphasis here when it comes to propagation. If you notice here, there's sort of like a slight difference where sort of like a small, tiny kind of thing, and then there's a changeover of a different leaf setting. This is the place where the plant actually sort of like propagates itself. So whenever this particular portion touches another surface in the wild, or in a natural environment where maybe at a tree trunk or something which is very moist, the roots might pick up from here and it grows. So if you ever come across, in most cases, where some people might just, or some gardeners may give tips where how they actually propagate by trimming off the part of it and poking it into a medium, in most cases, unless this portion is touching the the planting medium, it may not be successful. And in also the other factor here is that it is much more successful in a factor of air layering it rather than cutting the whole branch off, because in most cases this particular plant can appear to be alive for many months and may not even root. So these are the things of challenges when it comes to tassel fern. So in case that if you are purchasing a cut portion of it where they are saying it is sort of like propagation kind of thing, do look out for the root ball, because if you are not getting any roots on it, most likely this particular plant will perish. Now I'm going to come to my next tip on a general care of this particular plant. And one of the things that I find is that lighting, when it comes to lighting, I find that they do very well in reflected light or shaded, bright shaded area. Direct sunlight is a big no-no. And the other factor here is that total shade is also a big no-no. Somehow I find that they do very well when they receive like morning sun or evening sun or a little bit of that, because somehow I find that in total shaded area they seems to somehow face a rot problem, especially the root ball area where the draining doesn't take place very fast, and so the root ball is actually containing too much of water into their system and the whole thing somehow deteriorates. So these are the things that I find that lighting play a very big part of it. Do take note that these are cascading plants, so in a way that imagine that these are actually growing on a tree trunk or tree branches, and sort of like they like more of a shine kind of thing where wind and air movement is taking place, and so the light is very much shaded but also bright. Now another thing about watering here is a little bit of a contention, and one of the things I find here is that rainwater is the best. If you can collect it, use it. And the other factor here is that they don't do very well with chlorinated water, especially tap water. So do pay attention in the sense that if you were to find the leaves are burning up, you can see like a semi half burn portion of the leaves that is appearing, then the water is actually not suitable. So you will always find that the leaves appear to be very fresh, vegetable green like kind of appearance, lacking which then you do check on the water. Now the final thing about fertilizer, it's one of the things that I find that I still get it wrong, because too much fertilizer do burn this particular plant, and it will take forever for this particular plant to actually recover. My suggestion here is that if you are cautious and if you're not sure, try to dilute it. And one of the things that I have lost a huge collection of my Huperzia species was to use a wood vinegar on it, and somehow the factor of appearance, it didn't show until it's too late. So do figure out in a way to see that in most cases some fertilizers is way too strong and not suitable. And the other factor here is organic fertilizers such as chicken manure or goat manure can also be sort of like containing urea, which can also causes burns. So these are the things that you may have to figure out, because certain brands may not be the same as other kind of fertilizers. So in a way that I can say is that suggest to try it out in a small scale or do like a test kind of thing, instead of applying it in a whole collection, and in case the whole collection dies, then you lost it and you have to buy or you have to purchase it back again. And in some cases, most of these particular plants are so rare and expensive, and you don't want to take such risk. However, based on my research, I have found that two of the supposed fertilizer works best for them is one is to always try to cultivate or use root hormone base elements, or if at all that there is a fertilizer that actually says that it actually encourages a stronger root growth, I would encourage you to use that. And I find that seaweed solution is one of the best ones that I have come across personally. The other thing here is that still in contention is the use of banana peel fertilizer. Now the thing here is it does have very good results. Truth be told, that is one of the best that I've come across, especially when it also to be used for something similar for staghorn fern. Now the problem here is that I live in a place where wildlife is free to roam around, and I have bad experience with it, especially when it comes to tree shrew or squirrels thinking there is food in it, and they just tear up the whole front looking for the banana. So these are the things that you may have to figure out and check and see. And the other negative factor about using organic fertilizer is that some of it, if it's not properly treated, may carry some fungus in it and may cause root rot, and you may lose the whole plant. So I would really ask you to handle with caution and also do some research. I would always consider that there is a balance of both, because in a way I can say is that different gardeners may have a different gardening conditions that may be very suitable for me and may not be suitable for you, or vice versa. So these are things that you have to watch out for and figure it out, because something when it comes to Huperzia, they are indeed rare plants because they are not really easily available and still in their premium prices. Another factor that I also find here is that a lot of new gardeners or beginners will be very zealous about growing this particular plant and end up purchasing a lot of it, only to find that this particular plant may not be suitable or die in their hands, and they may have sort of like broken hearted towards it and have given up hope in growing Huperzias. So I would like to talk about that in a sense that it's always best to start slow, learn the plant and figure it out, all their secrets, and once you get it right, and then you cultivate by purchasing and collecting the ones that is considered rare and not easy to get in the local market. Now finally I come to the end of the video, and I like to end it with some of my gardeners friends who are actually cultivating Huperzias and also do their tutorials in various platforms, social medias. And I would like to check out a few of the factors here, and one of the things that I would like to highlight is growing the Huperzia using coconut chips medium or even a coconut husk. And these are the interesting things that I found in a unique and a successful way, in a way to say that the element where when it comes to coconut husk, somehow there is a magic to it. And the other things that I have learned personally is by observation, and I find that using coconut chips or coconut husk seems to be one of the most successful method when it comes to cultivating Huperzias. And I would like to give my utmost thanks to Chokli, Debbie Chin, and also Ying Min Teo for their pictures and for that. And I would like to give that credit to them for this particular video. Thank you so much. And if you have any queries, do put them in the comment below, and I'm glad to help you through in this gardening experience. I've now come to the end of my video, and this is the part that I would really like to ask you for your favor. And if you really can, I would really appreciate very much that if you can actually subscribe to my channel. And this actually helps the YouTube algorithm to sort of like select and show the element of traffic that takes place in my channel, and this would actually create more awareness for all the other gardeners here who may want to see more of the detailed information on my garden space. And hence, when there's a lot of traffic, this will actually help to garner more interest in my channel. One of the factors that I've actually noticed is through the analyst is that I only find only 2% of the people here who actually does click like and subscribe to my channel. Hence, I would really like to make emphasis here for a request. And if you really like my video and if you find that my videos and my channel is beneficial and helpful for your gardening experience, and you look forward for looking into my garden space, I would really appreciate seriously if you can click like and subscribe to my channel, and do place in your comments, and I will more than happy to entertain and indulge myself in putting in all the queries in according to your questions based on my experience and my knowledge. Also, I would really like to request that you do check out in all your other videos here, which is under popular and most viewed, and see if at all any plants that actually garner your gardening experience. Thank you so much for your support, and see you again in my next video. Take care and have a nice day. Bye.